welcome to another episode of Carney and Coach. I am your resident best parent ever, Steve Carney, and with me is Coach, aka Old Greg.
What's happening?
How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic.
Good to hear. We're back for season two. We had so many followers. I think 21 on YouTube or something like that. That we're
Hmm.
back. It was
I
a
know.
resounding success.
They were all demanding it. Season two. Season two.
So we want to appease the audience, and here we are.
Let's do it.
So yeah, today's episode, Greg and I kind of threw out a bunch, and I think we each have a pretty good story around the topic, which is sportsmanship. So just sportsmanship and youth sports. Again, our kind of our mission statement is really to kind of help parents de-stress around youth sports, kind of add a little bit of perspective, bring people back down to earth, and realize that we're not all trained in the next Michael Jordan or the next Wayne Gretzky. Somebody might be, but
Might
the
be.
vast majority of us aren't. So
It's probably
what?
not us.
Probably not. So what can we get out of what can we get out of this whole deal other than stress and anxiety and dumping all of our personal savings?
That's,
So,
that's right. That's right.
but before we get into the topic, I think we want to try to be cool and hip. So, Greg, you had an idea for a headline? What was
We got
that?
two
Or highlight?
headlines.
Yeah.
Two headlines. First is the NFL. You have your Chiefs shirt on. Let's talk about your beloved Kansas City Chiefs, which, by the way, I grew up in Kansas, and I really don't like the Chiefs. I'm a big Bears fan. Jumped on the bandwagon in '85. Can't get off. Oh, they're so brutal. I mean, it's just so brutal.
Keep punishing yourself.
I know. What am I going to do, right? But
I
I'm
don't know.
loyal to a fault. But so your Kansas City Chiefs, what are they? 4-1, 5-1, something like that. Another big win this week. But
Yeah.
all the world can talk about is your boy Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. What is going on in the NFL today, Steve Carney?
Oh, I really hate this topic, as a matter of fact. I think it was Al Michaels. I saw he quoted something, and I'm going to misrepresent it, right? But when the sideshow becomes the show, you've jumped the shark. And so I don't know. I mean, there's always these side topics in the NFL. There's this guy's doing this, that guy's doing this. I mean, I guess I should be happy that there's nobody that's kicked a woman in the face. We're talking about a guy dating a woman, so so that's a positive, right?
That is true. That is true. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
don't know.
it's too much, right? It's
It
just
is,
over the
yeah.
top. And here I noticed that Kelsey was on Saturday Night Live this weekend, making an appearance there, and yeah, it seems like it's too much, and these things just don't ever seem to turn out well. You know what I mean? And you've already got a target on your back. I mean, you're the Chiefs. You're arguably the best or one of the best teams. Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback in the league, which hurts me to say because the Bears could have drafted him way back when, but they didn't.
Typical
So
Bears.
why would you want to put even more targets on your back? And here's the other thing I got to ask you: is it real? So Lindsay, my wife, pretty big sort of celebrity gossip follower and celebrity. I'm going to call her a conspiracy theorist a little bit, but so Taylor Swift has, some sort of a concert movie that just came out, right? And Travis Kelce, I think, has some sort of documentary coming out. Is this real? Or is this just put together by a couple of PR teams to bring awareness to their personal brands before starting on some other projects? That's my other question.
Yeah, well, I'll say since you probably need to know this, Kelsey was famous before Taylor Swift. He was already mostly a Hall of Fame tight end. So, I mean, could it be fake? I guess. Honestly, I wish it would just stop. If he wants to date her, by all means, go have fun, do your thing. I'll listen to the breakup song in a few weeks, whenever it comes out.
Yes, I can't wait to
It's
hear
like,
it.
I know, right? I'll go try to find and post it, but I already saw somebody wrote one. It's kind of comical. I don't get to. There's some conspiracy theories that I do buy into. I mean, she's there with his mom. She's there with his dad. Like, I mean, there's a whole lot of people that would have to be involved in this quote unquote conspiracy to, that you have to. Where's all the hush money going to? I guess I don't
Yeah,
know.
right, right, right,
I
right.
don't know. I just think it's another. It's another. If you know anything about Travis Kelce, like even in college, he kind of was this flamboyant and kind of guy that's just kind of crazy. It fits with his persona that he's going to do something wild and crazy. I think that's pretty fitting. Um, I'm happy for the guy. I just like to watch him play football. I really could give two craps about his dating life. So,
Yeah.
but congrats for him, I guess.
Yeah, it does. It seems a little over the top. I think it ends poorly for the Chiefs. It's going to result in some losses, maybe an early first round loss in the playoffs, and
You bite your tongue.
we're
You
going to
shut
blame
your
it.
mouth.
You're going to blame it all on Tay Tay. I think that's what's going to end up happening. So, all right. So that's headline number one, light and fluffy. Headline number two comes out of St. Louis. And from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch,
Ooh, yeah.
St. Louis youth football coach says he was shot by parent. This was just 3 days ago, and I'm not. I think they sent you this when it happened,
You
right?
did. You
So,
did.
so, so you read about that, and yeah, it kind of fits into a little bit about our topic of today, and it also sort of fits in to our last episode when we were talking a little bit about Max, my son, not getting a chance to play football. But I don't know if you got a chance to read that whole article, but yeah, this coach in St. Louis, football coach, says he was shot because he wasn't playing his son, the son of the shooter. And so what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I do not condone that sort of violence at all. So, like, I'm going to try to peel this away and peel this topic away because I don't want to seem like I am attacking the victim or condoning violence in any way because I don't. Um, so maybe if we take it back a notch, right? Like, uh, I, I don't know what age group this is, and it doesn't matter because somebody got shot. All that stuff. I think it's a terrible, terrible thing.
Right, right.
I'm gonna compartmentalize that and put that over to the side so that I
Nine and
now it's on
nine and 9 and 10-year-olds, just so you know, 9 and 10-year-old
fair,
boys.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna reframe this conversation a little bit so that I don't to kind of not talk about the violence aspect of it, which is should parents take action when, whenever their child they think their child is being unfairly treated, and I would say that it, especially as a 9 and 10 year old, a younger kid, I do think it's okay to take action on behalf of your child, to advocate for them and stand up for them, especially if you think they're being treated unfairly. There's a concept in baseball that we call dad ball, which is the coach has a kid on the team, he's a dad, and his son can do no wrong. And so you see that a lot in youth
Yep.
sports. I don't think doesn't help the game by any means. But there are ways that you can go about approaching your coach without pulling out a gun and shooting them.
Yeah.
Many, as a matter of fact.
Many. Exactly.
there's levels of this. So, and I'll actually give you an example from this weekend. So, a lot of you guys know my son is playing at a much higher level of baseball, and to be honest with you, he's having some struggles. And I also committed to him that I would not do the thing that Greg teases me about, which is I don't talk to him during innings. I don't talk to him after his at bats. I don't talk to him at all while he's playing the game about what he's doing in the game, other than like, hey, do you need some water? Right? Are you okay? So
Yeah.
there's still some of that. But hitting, so he's struggling. And so on Sunday, I'm sitting there just his coach is doing what they call play 9, hit 9, which means there's typically 11, 12, 13 ball players on a team. Even at his age of 14, they will let all of them hit, and they'll just kind of switch them in and out of the field indiscriminately. Well, in this instance, his coach is only playing 9 players and only hitting 9 players. So he is riding the pine. And I'm a parent, and I'm like, oh, just so mad. But I also know that he's struggling at the plate. He's not doing real great, and this team's designed to win. And
Yeah.
so I didn't say anything to the coach that day, even though I really wanted to lash out because that's just my nature, right? To like, see, I feel unjust, whatever.
Yeah.
But then today, I texted the coach 24 hours later, and I said, "Hey, I know Elliot's struggling, and what can we do, or do you have any recommendations to help him improve? He's having struggles at the plate." I said, what can we do, right? So I took this approach of I'm gonna let the coach be the coach, and I'm going to just request feedback. I'm going to take it emotionless and just take the feedback, and then I'm going to try to apply the feedback. And I think that's the best way to do it. And I am going to advocate for the 24-hour. I mean,
Yeah.
48 if you're really seething, because you end up with things like this. Like I was so mad yesterday, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, why am I so mad? Why am I so mad that my son isn't playing? And he came out and talked to me a couple times, just like, hey, can I have this? And I was like, everything going okay? He's like, yeah. And he knew, he understood. He wasn't fired up about it. He wasn't
Right.
crying.
Right.
He understood. And so like I had to take a step back and a breather.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's so much to peel back there. First of all, just in case you're not familiar with what Steve is talking about with the 24-hour rule, it's pretty common practice for parents, a best practice that, and from the coaching perspective, I would always ask this of my parents that, I'm always open to speak to parents about their kids. But I only ask that we wait 24 hours after our last game, before contacting me. And the idea is that, everyone's going to be better. And it's something to understand as well, is that we as coaches, we're not our best after a game either, right? Like, you want to get my best feedback on your child. By the way, it's also better to wait because, we are, emotional and fired up just as much as you are. We're
yeah,
invested in what's happening. And so if a parent comes up to you right after the game and is like, hey, what's going on? Or, what do, even nice things like, even good approaches like you have, which is like, hey, so-and-so's not doing so good. I noticed he didn't play much. What should he be working on? Your mind's all over the place, and especially if you're a dad as well. It's like, God, I got kids, and like I'm trying to figure out where all my children are, and like, where's my wife, and where am I supposed to be? And and it's like, well, yeah, Joe needs to, work on his weak foot, I guess. I don't know. Like, I got stuff to
yeah,
do, So it's interesting that, I think it's best for both. And I don't know if we talk a lot about the coaching side of it, that you're actually going to get a better answer, I think, that way. But so that's the first thing. Second thing I'd love to peel back on is the 9 and 9 aspect. So Elliot's 13, going on 14. So and high school starts next year, right? So what it in high school they do 9 and 9, or
I
okay.
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I guess my question is it time for that? Is it too early for that? What is your take on that, just from a developmental perspective? And is the coach doing this like for the whole season, or is this just like, hey, we're going to do it this weekend and check it out? I'm really curious about how that is
Yeah.
working.
So on Saturdays is typically what they call the play-in days, which means like if you lose or win, you're most tournaments you're guaranteed 3 games. And so the
Right.
first 2 games on Saturday are like your seeding games. I'm air quoting for the audio folks, which means that you play all these games and then you determine when you play on Sunday. Sunday is bracket play. It's you win and you keep going, you lose and you're out. And so the coach he does this play 9, hit 9 on Sundays when you're there to win. So
I
and
gotcha.
I also feel like and he has set the expectation in a previous tournament that he is going there to win. And as much as it hurts me to say, my son is not at the plate helping his team very much right now. Like in the field, he's fine. But at the plate, he is struggling mightily, and he has some stuff to work on, and we're working on it. So I get it and I understand it. I don't like it, but that and part of the problem for me is I want to help my son succeed. I don't want him to be up there just swinging and getting outs. I want him up there succeeding. So I have to kind of step back a bit too, and try to help him. Like, is it good for him to be up there, like just taking hacks and like getting outs for his team? Probably not. Like it's
Right.
going to hurt his confidence. So I think I understand it. I don't like it, but it's a part of it. It's part of the game, and I'm just trying to, just like anybody listen to this, I'm trying to navigate this stuff. I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure it out as I go, and I really think that I made a good decision by waiting 24
No
hours.
doubt, no doubt. And just to bring it back to the headline, I mean, I think this podcast, the thing that I would say about the guy who shot the coach is just that, like, you and I both see him. We see him. Like, we've all felt that anger. And if there's anything I
Yeah,
would just say in this podcast, it's like, that stuff is real. I mean, it is. I mean, messing with your children is just about the hardest thing to deal with. And so sports is this kind of weird kabuki theater where somebody can kind of treat your child poorly and you just have to sort of deal with it. Sometimes it's okay. It makes sense. It sounds like maybe in Elliot's situation that it's sort of appropriate, but
yeah,
there are other times when it's not appropriate, right? And we don't know the whole story on this particular situation, but I guess what I would just say about that headline is that, I mean, gosh, we all have to just take a break. We all have to just take a breather. I mean, the violence is never, ever, ever, ever going to make it better. It just isn't going to
yeah.
make it
I think
better. And shooting is such a crazy thing. But what we probably have both seen is yelling, maybe a little pushing, fighting, fisticuffs, just
yeah,
things like that. And none of that works. I mean, none of it does. I mean, just take it from two guys that have been around this for a while, who have made mistakes, who have felt all sorts of anger. It's not the way. It's not going to help. And just like in the whole scheme of things, again, if we get back to thinking about a 10-year time horizon, today's game just, it doesn't matter. Even the season doesn't matter. You can find another team, you can find another coach, and there's things to learn every step of the way. Elliot, your son, is learning so much right now. Even the not playing is teaching him something, right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, it's not easy, but it sounds like you dealt with it pretty well.
I'd say the last piece that I would want to cover on this particular highlight is like, what do you want out of the interaction? What do you want from your coach? Do you want your kid to play? Do you want your kid to get better? Because those are two different things. I guess. Do you want to go to jail? Right? Because that's what happened to the shooter. And even if you get in a fight, right? Like, is that worth it? Like, you could lose your career just by getting assault and like hurting somebody. So that's stuff. Like you said, it doesn't matter. It's not worth it. I mean, I even had like some interactions whenever Elliot was younger, like 7, and he wasn't playing, and I felt it was unjust. And ultimately, I just, you know, I didn't know. I knew that I wasn't going to change the coach's mind, so we left. We found a new team. You know why? Because
Right.
we live in St. Louis, and there's like a thousand other teams to go through. So,
Right.
um, yeah. Anyway, that's
All right,
my
so
two cents.
those are our two headlines for the week. So if you're listening to this podcast and have any thoughts on either one of those topics, let us know in the comments. We'd love to chat about them with you.
Yeah. So, Greg, another one of my favorite parts of this podcast. What's Coach drinking?
Oh yes, absolutely. Special drink today for those of you on the screen that can see. Saratoga sparkling water. It's relatively new sparkling water for Coach Greg, and yes, it's fast. It's fantastic. It's one of the best just sparkling waters on the market right now. So Saratoga, if you're looking for if you're looking for a sponsor, we have almost 20 followers, and
Right.
so we could really do some moving and shaking here if you want it.
Does it have a real watery flavor?
Mm-mm. Nah, that is sparkling. That's tart.
Oh,
Yeah, that
more
is
of a sparkling flavor.
that's
Gotcha.
that's bubbling in your mouth right there.
Is there a little bit of glitter in there? Did I see? Like,
Yes, yeah, it's good. Yeah, yeah. Like,
all right. Where
what
can
is
I
that?
find Saratoga?
You can find it at your local, Publix or
Okay.
Schnucks, I suppose,
All
in the
right.
St. Louis area. So yeah, grab yourself some Saratoga.
Great. All right. Perfect. Okay. So so the number one topic that we had kind of selected that, we coach and I had queued up was sportsmanship. And so I think your headline there really kind of hits on a little bit of that. That's kind of like, I always get these words mixed up, but like inter-team dynamics, right? Like how a team is functioning within itself versus intra-team, which is like how one team is interacting with another. And I think so you have a little bit of a kind of a story about inter-team dynamics, meaning like how Max specifically is getting treated and what your feedback is. And then I have one where my youngest daughter, Cecilia, was playing a soccer game, and I feel like the other coach could have he should have listened to our podcast. I think is ultimately.
Well, yeah, I can't wait to actually bring up your story. But for those of you that listen into our last episode, my youngest Max was going out for football, and has been put on a YMCA team. He is 11 years old, so not much different age than our shooters in St. Louis. And the coach I think they have like 11 players on the team, and I think 5 or 6 play on either side of the ball. And this particular coach has decided that he has his offense and he has his defense, and he doesn't let the kids on defense play offense. Clearly, his best athletes play offense. My youngest Max is not in that group, but desperately wants to be in that group. So if you remember last time, I was sort of wondering if I should talk to the coach about it. And I ultimately decided not to, and I still haven't spoken to the coach. Interestingly enough, after this podcast, I sort of shared this with several people, and I was almost shocked. I mean, overwhelmingly, people agree that it's ridiculous, including a fellow parent who apparently has been playing flag football for like 15 years. I didn't even know that the YMCA had been doing flag football at this location that long, but his son is the youngest, and he's
Oh, I
got.
thought you meant like he himself was playing flag football.
No. I'm sorry. He was a parent whose children have been playing,
Okay.
and he said, "Man, after 15 years, I've never seen anything like this either." So obviously, those of you who agree that this is ridiculous, yourself included, Steve,
I do.
are all sort of in agreement. But yet, I still just haven't had the I don't know. I just haven't really brought it up. But I will say this: I did talk to my youngest. I talked to Max. And I said, hey, listen, man, you got to tell this coach what's up. You got to tell him what you want to do. And so he went to a practice. He told the coach he wanted to play. Coach said, we'll see what we can do. Next game, this is no joke. This is a great story. They were losing 42-0, just absolutely getting hammered. And it was.
So what you're saying is the coach's strategy of the best athletes on offense
it wasn't working.
It's working great.
Exactly. And I mean, and here's where like my wife, and she's so right. Like when you're losing that bad, it's like, what? Who cares, right? Just start throwing kids wherever, Same goes for being up. And we'll talk a little bit about sportsmanship and that kind of stuff too. But anywho, so Max, to his credit, it was like one of the last drives of the game. And the coach said, all right, offense, time to come out. Max walked right out there, put his hand up, and I couldn't hear what he was saying. I could just see it. And he put his hand up, and basically I could see that the coach was sort of like telling him to get off, and he just would not get off. He was just like, nope, I'm here. And so then he kind of looked at another kid and said, okay, fine, you leave. So Max gets to play in an offensive set at the end of the game. This is the first
Max?
yeah. So first offensive set. And would you believe this? That kid scored a touchdown. They put him in at running back, and he ran through that whole defense and scored a touchdown.
Hell yeah, dude.
They ended up losing 42-6. Of course, they mixed the extra point. And it was great, And then the next game, he didn't play offense again. So
that's a terrible ending. That's a terrible ending.
I mean, what a tone deaf coach, right? Like you're losing 42-6. You put a kid in there, he scores a touchdown. It was a really good touchdown, by the way. Like it was really good. Like he went through, like he's juking kids out. And then, and then the next game was like, nah. And then we lost that game, like, I don't know, 40-16. So we're obviously struggling. But yeah, I guess, the only thing that I will say about all of this is, it turns out the coach is pretty jacked up here. But, I will just say that kind of going back to all of our kids and all of our sports, I mean, there is this sort of transition of like trying to get our kids to own it. And Max was really disappointed, very disappointed. And I guess my feeling on this was that, he needs to own it, and then I feel like if he owns it, there's a better chance of him making something out of it. Now, we only have one game left. I think if the season was longer, maybe I might get in there and say something, but the bottom line is that we're not going to go back to this coach. I even told Max I would coach. I've never played football in my life. But I said, if you want to coach next year, I'd be happy to do it. I mean, can't be that difficult. I mean, it's football,
Probably not as easy as coaching baseball, right?
I mean, yeah, it's the same thing, right? Like, soccer, you don't get timeouts, right? Like it just all has to happen. Baseball, it's like, you get a break every 10 minutes and, football, God. You get a piece of paper. The coach gets out there with a piece of paper and gets to wait every 45 seconds to give directions. I mean, this is easy. I mean, this is super easy compared to coaching
video. Soccer. I need some more video of Coach Greg making the jump to American football.
We're gonna be kicking field goals. I can tell you that. Like, no, we're fine. We're actually gonna kick.
That's right.
Here, yeah. So, so I think what I would just say from a sportsmanship perspective, though, in the coaching there, if I had to critique this coach, is I think you have to, as a coach, you do want to start teaching. Sportsmanship is about fairness. It's about being fair and balanced. And so, I think as you're a coach, if you want to be an effective coach, you've got to learn how to create an atmosphere where all kids can succeed. And I will just tell you, after years of coaching, that it is a process that you've got to work at it. It's not, parent coaches, a lot of dad coaches really fail in understanding what true fairness means. But when you can take kids, whether it's basketball, baseball, whatever the sport is, if you can create clear expectations and then allow the kids to work towards those clear expectations, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot more chemistry in your team, because kids are going to know exactly what is expected of them. And then if they don't, if the coach had said, hey, listen, we're going to run, on Friday at practice, we run a bunch of wide receiver throws, and if your son can't catch 5 out of 10, I just can't put him out there. Okay, fine. Max, you're not catching any of the balls, so that's why you're not wide receiver, right? Like really clear expectations of what kids can go practice and get to. That stuff kind of works, and I think that's the idea of sportsmanship, is being fair. And, when you get up big, it's about being fair. When you're down big, it's about, fairness. So when I think about sportsmanship from a coach perspective, that's what I think about.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That I personally, I would be careful. I think there's a clear line of, like, when fairness doesn't mean everybody gets equal playing time, in my opinion.
True.
But what I feel like, to your point, is fairness means that equal opportunity, right? But that doesn't mean equal outcome. So
right.
I'm going to use Max as an example. You may have a bunch of kids who played a bunch of football, and Max is trying to break into that group. Me as the coach, I would try to reward development. If Max is working real hard at practice and he doesn't get a ton of snaps, like if he starts to improve, he will get more snaps, right? Like if
Yep.
he does well in a game, if I was his coach, not that I love you and Max and all your family, but if he scores a touchdown on the final drive, I might give him another shot. Be like, hey, you get a couple snaps. You produced, right?
Yeah.
So he may not get as much as the starter, the number one, but I think that would allow him to then kind of have more buy-in for the team. So when they win, he feels a part of it.
Right.
So I agree. I do agree. I think it's clear expectations to it. And as a parent, I like I said about Elliot's baseball experience, the coach set the expectation that we're here to win, and I can clearly see because my son is having he's not the best one at the plate right now. He's not helping them win, and so in as much as like I was very like having a bunch of emotion, um, it was fair to the other boys,
Yeah.
and it wasn't and it was fair to Elliott because that's what he had done on the field, and
Yep.
that's where he was in that moment.
Yep, yep. And then and where that really works in that coach's benefit is just that if he stays consistent through the whole year, right? So
Yeah,
Elliott fixes his problems, he starts producing at the plate, and then he gets to play. He goes, I don't know, he goes 6 for 8 with 3 doubles and a home run, and then he's still out on Sunday. That's where it gets frustrating for the parent, for the kid, because it's like,
yeah,
wait a minute, what's happening here?
yeah.
Share your story about sportsmanship, because I think it's an interesting, share your story, but it's definitely something to
Yeah,
dwell on as we think about what it means to have good sportsmanship and what it means to be a coach.
yeah, sure. So, I talked about the 24-hour rule earlier in this episode, and for the sake of this story, you should forget that I said that.
Remember, we're gonna have a mistakes episode, right? So
All right.
we could
Yeah, yeah,
share
yeah.
that for that one.
Sure. So, my youngest daughter, Cecilia, she plays soccer. She's my only soccer player. She really does love it. And she's 8. She's okay, right? Like she's not the next Mia Hamm. She wants to be, but she's got a lot of development to do. And her team is playing in like this Greg's familiar with it. It's called SLISA, which is like St. Louis Youth Athletic Association. It's a pretty competitive league, but they also have different like levels of that league, right? Like they have like a top tier and like middles, and I think she's somewhere in the middle tier. Honestly, I think that their team needs to be a little bit lower. That's my critique on the coaching experience there. But anyway, so they're playing in this game, and it's the end of the first half, and they're losing 9-0 maybe already in like a game where like the halves are like 25, 30 minutes, not very long at all. And these other girls are legit just teeing off. Our girls, they do the kickoff. One of their other teams sprints through the middle, gets the ball. All of them just rush down the field, try to take a shot. If they miss, well, we do a goal kick, and then the other girls are not staying back, and then they immediately get the ball and like just another goal. And so this game ended like 15 or 16-0, and they didn't even finish the second half. Well, uh, Steve proceeded to walk over to the opposing coach, and I believe my words were, "What the hell are you doing, man?" And his response fired me up even more, which is like, "What do you want me to do?" And in my rage, I didn't have all of these comments, but I'm sitting here thinking afterwards, I'm like, "You're the coach, right? Like, your girls are obviously better. Me personally, I've been on soccer teams in high school where we're beating people 7-0, and our coach looks at us and goes, "Hey guys, we need 5 passes and we need a cross, and then you can shoot." It wasn't and it was like, we obviously could put another 10 on this team, but it was like, hey, we're gonna and also we're gonna pull a man back and we're not going to attack. So this guy, he's like, well, they're 8 years old, they don't understand. Like, well, no, they're 8 years old. And he's like, well, I offered to let you guys put another person on the field, but the center referee wouldn't let him do it. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you take one of your players off? So this guy just had a bunch of excuses about why he couldn't let his girls why he couldn't stop his girls from scoring. And so my frustration was really about like, what are we teaching? What are we teaching my girls? Because literally there were 3 or 4 girls on our team, including my daughter, who were sobbing after the game.
Yeah, right.
They were just crying. Now again, I go back to what I said to start this conversation: is they're playing in a league that's a little bit too advanced for them, and they need to be
Yeah,
brought down. At the
yeah.
same time, you you as a coach, it's your responsibility. I'm looking at you, Greg, to understand the score, understand the situation,
Right.
have some perspective of what's going on around you. Your girls are obviously better. We're not going to score any goals. So why don't you pull a girl back? Why don't you pull a girl off the field? Why don't you? He's like, oh yeah, we told them we had to take an extra pass. Maybe take 5 passes. Maybe just get the ball and knock it around. I don't care.
Yeah, right,
But he demoralized our team. And
right.
at 8 years old, that's unacceptable in my opinion.
Yeah, right. Well, that's when you told me that story, because you did share that with me previous to this podcast. I was actually kind of surprised that you went and spoke to the other coach. So you definitely must have been pretty fired up. That's
I
for
was.
sure. Yeah, I hear you. I will just say, and to the point that we were just making about coaching and football, baseball versus soccer. I mean, soccer is the most difficult sport to coach that behavior out of because you don't have any stoppages of play. You can't call a timeout. You can't just like completely just shift, tactics. And the other thing I'll stick up for this coach and say is that if you've never done that before, it's actually way harder than you think that it could be, in the sense of like kids aren't always, especially at 8 years old, they're not always like easily programmed, to sort of call off the dogs. Now, with that said, there's definitely things you can do. The one thing you shared with me in that story that, oh man, used to fire me up is, they have like these build outlines, and there, it's very easy to get your team to come back to the half field line just after a goal, just like everybody, that way the other team can at least get it out, because
Right.
if you don't do that, yeah, you'll just sort of overrun people over and over and over again. So yeah, I have been on both sides of that. And I think the interesting thing there too is around the age. I mean, age of 8. I would tell you, I was just coaching 14-year-olds just a few months ago. We were getting pounded, and the opposing coach created this like really ridiculous thing where like you could only score off of headers, something like that. And the kids were yelling it, and the kids are like, stop shooting, you're only supposed to do headers. And I was irate. And I pulled when the kids came out at half, as I were pulling them off and pulling them back on. I was like, are you listening to this crap? You want to be, beaten by a team that's only using headers? I mean, go score some goals. Like, this is ridiculous. So I could see it both ways. Like, kids are not always the best. They're not always really diplomatic in that way. And sometimes they can use some of that stuff almost as almost kind of like as a power move. Like, they're kind of throwing it in your face. In retrospect, I really thought about when we were getting beat really bad, about how I don't think I'll really ever do that again. Or if I do, I think I'll try to do it much simpler and maybe not as obvious. Telling your kids to only pass a few times and then they start yelling all over the field about it is just about as poor of sportsmanship that I'd ever come across, and it really just fired me up big time. So I think that I do understand the frustration on some of those deals, but sometimes from a coaching perspective, I think it is harder than you might think that it is. And at the end of the day, like, it's just one game, right? And so you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Can you pull a player off? Can always like take the goalie out, and just like put in somebody who's never played goal. Take your best scorer and put him back in goal. I mean, there are definitely things that you can do. But I don't know if I like as much the pass it 5 times and then cross and then everybody's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we were in high school, and
Right. A
and
little
so
different.
a little different. I mean, what you can do is you can tell your girls to get back to the half line, right? Like, there like you said, that there's this particular like a I don't even know it's almost like between the inline and the half line they put
So
on these
it's called
fields.
a build out line. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. The build out line, like they were just at that, and then they were just like laser
Yep.
focused on scoring,
Yep.
and it just to me like I get what you're saying, dude, but like you're the coach. It is your job to be the leader of that team. It is your job to orchestrate and like figure it out. Like in as much as and especially at this young age, like you're coaching, I assume 14-year-olds, 15
Yeah.
year olds.
In
And
that
so,
moment, right? It's a little different.
they're a little bit older, right? But here's the thing. I don't know if I should. They're celebrating every goal. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
woohoo,
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
at us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey, dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
congrats.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I can score on my 8-year-old too. Like,
I
I don't know
know.
what.
I know
So,
it. That is. I know that is. It's hard. And I was actually just at a game here recently, and the same deal. My son's team was doing very very well, but we carpool with a kid who is a defensive player. He's always wanted to play striker. He doesn't really have the striker skill set yet, and so he plays a lot of defense. And so at the end of the game, the coach put him up front and let him play striker because they were up so much. And he scored. And I kind of went berserko. I was like so excited for this kid because I know him and he is a great kid. And I was so happy for him. And then I sat down and I thought, oh God, it's like it's like 9-0. And I was just rooting like we just won the World Cup. So yeah, I guess it's just like it's complicated, right? But I hear
it
you,
is.
and what you can't really like gauge is like some of those teams that win like that, they have like this kind of arrogant persona about them, just sort of
Oh,
like
he did.
like you gotta stop us. And so I think that's probably where the sportsmanship comes in, right? Is where like I guess I will stick up for some coaches and say that it's not as easy as switching off kids, 8-year-olds, and just saying, okay, call off the dogs. I assure you, I have been a coach who's beaten teams 15-0. I know it. But I've also lost 15-0. So, I have the perspective of both for sure. And I would hope that from a sportsmanship perspective, you would start telling your kids like, hey, let's tone this down a little bit. We don't need to be celebrating like it's the World Cup. The parents, don't need to be doing that. We as coaches sure don't need to do it. And hopefully that helps bring the temperature down of the team. But yeah, if the coach is just like, yeah, just going crazy like that, that's not helpful for anybody, right?
Yeah, and it was a particular club too. I mean, it was the SLSG. I don't know. I don't. Nobody really listens to this. So I don't know if you ever played them. But
Is that Gallagher?
yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Gallagher, they're aggressive, right?
that's their whole thing too, right?
That's
And
their
I
whole
mean, I
thing.
get it. It's fine. I mean, ultimately, what I told my daughter because she was crying, as I said, uh, she did not see me go after this coach. So I'll put that feather in my cap, which is, I was like, hey, go hang out with your brother and your sister. I'll be back.
Dad's got to take care of business.
Dad's gotta go. I mean, I didn't want to shoot him, but I did maybe want to lightly just choke him just a
Yes.
little bit, just enough where
Yes.
he couldn't breathe real easy. But
Yes.
and even I don't know. Ultimately, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have gone over there to do it. But I really, and that's just an example. We're all human. In that moment, I kind of lost control. I still didn't yell at him. I just said, "What are you doing, man? Like, are you happy that you won 15-0? Like, you guys are celebrating like you won the World Cup, right? Just kind of stuff like
Right.
that." And it's
Right.
like, I thought, and so but back to where I was going, I told Cecilia, I said, "You're going to lose sometimes 15-0,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have to decide whether or not you like soccer or not. And you're
Yep.
going to win too." And
Yep.
I didn't go home and say, "Oh my God, you got to practice." I didn't get on to her. I said, "Hey, you played hard, you played good. Let's go home and let's not think about this anymore." And that's what we
Yep.
did. We haven't thought about it
Yep.
since.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's the resiliency of kids, right? I mean, across the board, the kids don't care nearly as much as we do. And they're able to just like move on way better than we are, Yeah, bringing up the liking part. Deion Sanders in Colorado lost this weekend,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, they were down like 29-0 or something, and lost in the second half. And after the game, he had a great press conference. I don't know if you heard his press conference, but
I did
he
not.
took it he took it really well, and he said something to the effect of, I told the kids in the locker room, you got to do more than just like football. You got to love football because I love football. And this is Dion talking, right?
Yeah,
I love it. You got to match my passion. If you just like it, it's not going to work out. So, again, at 8 years old, it's tough to teach that at 8. But it still doesn't mean it's not any less true, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
you're gonna have wins, you're gonna have losses, and if you love the sport, you're able to get through it. I think the sportsmanship part of it is where we as coaches and parents, I think our jobs is just to try to tone down, all of the energy on all of this stuff, right? I mean,
Hmm.
sidelines are too toxic, and coaches are too aggressive, and all of it is just too toxic. And I think if we can bring the temperature down on it, then I don't think kids naturally want poor sportsmanship. I think that's a learned behavior from most of these kids.
Yeah, I just thought of something, and I mentioned this to you earlier too. And I've still been observing a lot of this, the toxicity on the sideline. Cece had a game this weekend, and I'm just sitting there, just watching her because I'm really being a part of this podcast has kind of transformed me a bit, right? I mean, aside from the one outburst that I had, I really tried to kind of practice what I preach, and so not coaching, not sideline coaching her anymore, and kind of just stepping back. And what I hear is whenever I'm quiet, I see a lot of sideline coaching, and what you see is the kids, they, especially at her age, they still listen to the parents. And they get confused, and they get flustered and frustrated, and I think that if like you said, we got to take the temperature down. We got to just let them play, let them be kids, because they're still kids out on the field. And I don't remember who I was talking to, but like development, there's some development that happens on the field, but the vast majority of development happens on the practice field.
Totally.
And so like, yeah, if your kid has a crappy game, okay, so go home and hit 100. Like how many times do they touch the ball? Maybe 30, right? Like they're going to touch the ball like 30 times in the beginning of one soccer practice, right? But
Exactly.
your kid only gets 3 at bats. Take them to the batting cage. Let them see 100 balls, right? So
Exactly. Exactly.
that's when development happens. Step back and enjoy the game. And and hopefully coaches too can do the same thing, right? Like step back a little bit. Like it's okay to just win 8-0. I mean, you don't have to,
Yeah,
like,
we used to think about, like, I mean, can you imagine if parents went to schools and joysticked during math tests the way they do on Sundays at the soccer field? Like,
that's an
carry the
interesting
one,
analogy.
carry the one.
That's a great, no, I mean, we talk about
You
what are
would
the other
never do
things?
that. You would
No.
never, ever do that, right? But yet in soccer, in sports, it's okay for you to show up at the sidelines and just yell obnoxious to your children for an hour. And it's just fun. It's unbelievably ridiculous. Now, I will say this, having now moved out of St. Louis and having coached all sorts of sports at all sorts of stages, I can tell you, and my boys will back this up, unequivocally the most toxic sidelines in the country are in St. Louis, specifically the Sliza organization. That whole thing is just so unbelievably toxic. And having grown up there from a coaching perspective, I sort of thought that was normal. And then I came to Tennessee and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, no one's yelling at anybody. What is happening here? So Sliza, soccer in St. Louis, Sliza in particular, it is just, man, I've seen some pretty bad stuff out there for sure. And it doesn't sound like it's gotten much better.
Well, hopefully it will. Hopefully, or we'll do something else. It's fine too.
Yeah, right on, right on.
Well, we're getting at time. I think we covered some pretty good topics about sportsmanship, headlines. I should have said this at the beginning of the episode, but if you made it this far, hit the like button, subscribe. The more followers we get, the more people get to see our episodes, and then eventually Greg and I will still get to do this for no money. So
exactly. Whoosh.
We love it. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. Appreciate it. Greg, I'll see you next time.
All right, buddy. Be good.